Welcome to the Tennis IQ podcast. I'm Josh Berger.
And I'm Brian Lomax. And in today's episode, Josh and I are going to discuss a topic called positive affect. So there's affect with an A, there's effect with an E. Affect with an A is really more about emotions. And so we're really talking a lot about positive emotions and the power of engaging with positive emotions. And we're going to begin the episode with a quote. Now, this is a quote from a book of another book. All right. So I'm currently reading Big Goals, a book by Caroline Adams Miller. She's a graduate of the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program at Penn, one of the best positive psychology programs out there. And I think, Josh, this is a good book for us to maybe go through at another time because there's some really cool stuff in here about goal setting and better ways of doing it than other frameworks that are out there. But one quote that really stuck with me is the following, and it's a quote from a book entitled "The Benefits of Frequent Positive Affect" by Sonia Lyubomirsky, Ed Diener, and Laura King. Also, those are well-known psychologists and researchers in the field of positive psychology. And so the quote is that from this book, basically it's a meta-analysis that showed that contrary to most beliefs, we only succeed in our goals when we are in a flourishing emotional state beforehand. We do not become happy because we achieve something. We prime the pump for success when we elevate our well-being first in a variety of ways, from practicing gratitude to having a regular meditation practice. Now, we've discussed habits like that in the past as being good for tennis players and their overall well-being. But I also wanted to apply this, Josh, because to me, priming the pump is also something we want to do before a match. Is how do we incorporate using positive affect as almost a means of better preparing for a match? Most matches are challenging. We don't necessarily want to go into that match based on the mood of the day or let something that happened earlier in the day drive our current emotions. Can we be more intentional about bringing positive emotions and positive affect kind of, to the party here and use that? So just maybe get some initial thoughts from you, Josh, and then perhaps get into some ways you think of, in terms of creating more of these emotions prior to competing.
I think it's an important topic to discuss because when we go into a match, there's certain things that we can expect. We can expect maybe some additional nerves. We can expect ourselves to maybe think about the consequences or think about, almost view the match as something bigger than it actually is. And by being intentional and being proactive, and implementing certain tools and certain strategies and skills, we can counteract some of the more negative or challenging impact that we're likely to experience. But also we can, I think, set ourselves up for success by, utilizing some of these different tools proactively. So we're not waiting to feel a certain way or waiting to be in a certain situation. We're using these tools proactively, almost, similar to a routine, right? It could be an aspect of our preparation routine where we're doing, almost a checklist of certain behaviors ahead of time. But, it could be big things. And we'll talk about some of the specifics, but it could be, specific mental tools that we're using, or it could be, just small, simple behaviors that might sort of be that quicker sort of boost. So no, I think it's a really important topic. And, especially in the preparation stage, I think that there's a lot that goes into that. And I think having specific tools to apply to that period of time is important, as we've talked about in the past. But I like this angle of talking about it because I think we can have the ability to sort of prime the pump or to best prepare us if we're taking that intentional approach.
So let's talk about, excuse me, some more of like the specific benefits of having these positive emotions prior to, because there's another theory in positive psychology called broaden and build. Barbara Fredrickson um, is the primary researcher on this, and she wrote a book called Positivity, which explains it much more. But the broaden and build theory is that when we are approaching a situation with more positive emotions, really a ratio of at least 3 positive emotions to 1 negative, there's no real way to get away from the negative, and we really shouldn't. It helps keeps us balanced and realistic. But when we have that more, between 3 to maybe say 8 to 1 ratio of positive emotions to negative, we're actually building more capacity to be creative, to think better, and to also build something called psychological capital, which is really, if you think about it, psychological strength. So, to me, why that's useful, Josh, is if we go into a match with more positive emotions and we've built up psychological capital, we're actually going to be more resilient to challenging things happening during the match. So it's almost like our inner fortress of mental toughness, our Jenga tower of mental toughness is stronger because we have engaged with positive emotions and we've primed ourselves for that. So to me, that's a huge reason we should do this. And if we think about the reverse, if we're for some reason stressed about the match itself, or there's been something else going on in our lives and we bring those emotions, our psychological capital or strength is lower. Our inner fortress of mental toughness is weaker. We're more likely to get broken kind of mentally and emotionally earlier than we would normally be. Now, this isn't to say that simply adding in positive emotion or positive affect before a match is like easy. Although I would say we are in control of our mood. But similar to breathing and body language, you have to decide to do that. Otherwise, it just does what it does, right? In many ways, the brain is similar to breathing. It involuntarily thinks. And just like, we involuntarily breathe, or the heart involuntarily beats, just does it. So the brain in many ways does the same thing, behaves that way. So we want to try to take more charge of this so that we can build those resources, be thinking better. The broaden piece is like we see a bigger picture more easily, and then we build on that. Negative emotions tend to narrow our choices down to more kind of fight, flight, freeze types of things. And so obviously in that state, you're not going to perform nearly as well. So I'm glad that you mentioned this as like almost a checklist activity, Josh. I do think it's a part of the preparation routine. I've included this for years with athletes, and I want to talk about some ideas on how to do this, and some can be quite creative. Because if you can get yourself in a really positive mood beforehand, you're going to be able to handle so much more that goes on the court. As you said, inevitably there will be a challenge of some sort. Wouldn't you like to be stronger in that moment? Right. So aside from, we can actually talk more specifically about gratitude and mindfulness or meditation prior as part of a routine, but what are some things that you have recommended to clients or students in terms of getting themselves in a good spot emotionally prior to competing?
There are a number of different things. I think it's important to recognize that people intuitively understand that because they may feel a certain way before competing, right? There might be nerves, there might be fear. I think a lot of people recognize that something needs to be done. And, I think people without maybe any exposure to sports psychology, a lot of, what people think about is maybe music, right? Maybe I want to listen to a little bit of music on the car ride to the match, right? I know I'm going to feel a little bit tense. Okay, let's listen to some music that might help me relax a little bit, right? Now, so I was talking to somebody yesterday, a younger athlete, about this, and I was saying, as they were explaining sort of what they experience before they compete, I was asking, okay, is there anything that you try to use, or anything, any tools that you feel like you have to sort of counteract that? And they were talking about music, and I think that's a sort of a basic strategy that that can be helpful, but that a lot of people are probably already using. But I think that there's a lot of um, different sorts of tools that can be used, right? Brian, you brought up meditation, you brought up gratitude, right? Maybe that's listing out certain things that you're grateful for, certain specific things, certain people, whatever that may be. I think meditation, whether it's guided or unguided, having, spending a few minutes, breathing, paying attention to your breath, noticing your thoughts, just really trying to um, be doing a practice like that, which can certainly be relaxing, can certainly help you spend more time in the present moment and be aware of whether you're present, whether you're in the future, which a lot of people are prior to a match, or in the past. So I think it can, yeah, help us be more present, help, certainly be relaxing, and then just also help us on the awareness piece, the awareness or mindfulness piece, where we can be more aware or mindful of what's happening within us, right? Whether that be thoughts, whether that be physical sensations, moods, certainly, and what's happening around us. And I think that awareness and mindfulness is certainly something we can bring into a match. But I think there's other things as well. I think visualization is a really key one. There's different ways we can visualize prior to a match. That could be visualizing our highlight reel, as I think we've talked about in the past. That could be visualizing a specific story or situation. Maybe it's a situation that you are likely to encounter out there in a match. What some people will do is they'll write out a visualization script or story, and they'll sort of, maybe it's around a paragraph long, something like that, but they'll tell a story, beginning, middle, and end, with lots of details, with plenty of realistic details and familiar details that can bring you into the moment a little bit more, things like senses and emotions, um, so that when they write it down and then ultimately record it and listen to it, it brings them into that situation a little bit more. It can feel more realistic, it can feel more vivid, which can be a real challenge with visualization, because what takes place in our head doesn't always necessarily feel quite as real as it happening in the physical world. So yeah, I think visualization is a big one, and again, different ways to do that. We can certainly expand on that a little bit more. um, I think having certain goals for yourself, certain specific things to focus on, those could be process goals, um, can be a huge help. I think what's really nice about having goals like that and giving yourself specific things to focus on, right? Maybe that's that maybe one of those process goals, or that I want to really slow things down between points and use my routine. Maybe one of those process goals is that I want to make sure that I'm stepping in to every forehand and backhand that I hit. Maybe one of those process goals is that I want to stay on my toes, as often as I possibly can, or that I want to, talk to myself in more of a helpful way. Whatever it is, but we can focus on certain controllable goals that directly lead to those types of outcomes and results we want. And what's nice about this is it gives us something else to focus on, instead of being so outcome and result focused, where we're focusing on that end result, which tends to lead to more anxiety and nerves. It gives us something else to focus on. We're focusing on how we get there. We're focusing sort of on those steps, those specific pieces that lead to that end result instead. So anyways, those are a couple of additional things for athletes to focus on prior to a match. I'm curious if there are some others that come to mind for you, Brian.
Yeah. I think I want to build on a couple of things that you have said. I think with the goals, we use the phrase priming the pump. That's a really good means of doing that by reviewing your goals, visualizing. You're setting yourself up to do those things better today. Um, Music, I like to use music. Maybe not everybody does, but I also would caution that don't just like use music as the only thing you do. Because in some ways, when we're working on pre-competition routines with athletes, they're like, "Oh yeah, I use music for that. I use music for that. I use music," right? And it's not really true. Um, and when we use music, let's be also specific about the type of music that you use. Maybe it's a curated playlist that you've created or a specific genre of music. For instance, when I go to a match, I would probably play one of two things, Josh. Like an electronic progressive type music or something like, Imagine Dragons, Fallout Boy, that kind of thing, right? Depending on what kind of mood I really want to be in, you know? If it's a long drive, typically use more like the electronic progressive stuff.
Yep.
If it's a short drive or I know I got a real battle, I might get myself a little bit more amped up. So I do like to use music, but I also try to be very intentional about the type of music. I think some other maybe more creative things to do on those days, and I'll share some things that I do, and I'll share some things that I've had other athletes do or that they've shared with me. I'll start with that. So one athlete, she's actually a figure skater, not a tennis player, but this could apply to anybody who has a pet. Part of our pre-competition routine was for her to play with her dog, Ollie, for 10 minutes. And she noticed a big difference when she did that, when she spent more time with her dog before leaving the house to go compete. So I thought that's pretty cool. A lot of people have pets. They are a great mood booster. So yeah, just engage with your pet a little bit more. I do like to do some meditation even when I'm at a tournament site. I might do it about maybe 45 minutes to an hour and just 5 minutes. 5 minute guided meditation. I think I found one on Insight Timer that I really like. I think it's by a guy named Andrew Johnson, and it's about confidence, like finding confidence. That's actually 6 minutes. It's really good. It gets you energized by the end of it, but it chills you out. I'm the kind of player who needs to get chilled out. Other players might need to get a little bit more excited. I need to kind of settle my nervous system down a little bit because I tend to be hyper and I want to be under more control at the beginning of a match. When we talk about gratitude, I think there are opportunities also to express gratitude that day. Not just in terms of a journal, but let's say you're a junior player. Can you say thank you to your parents for, supporting you, driving you here? This could apply to anybody. Can you say thank you to the people at the facility who are helping to run the tournament? Now, I don't play that many tournaments anymore. And a lot of the tournaments I play happen to be at a club where I know the guys who run it. But part of me getting in a good mood is seeing them, connecting with them, thanking them for running such a great event at a beautiful facility. And that automatically gets me in a good place, right? We're smiling together. We're connecting. So gratitude and connection, whether that's with those people or maybe your friends. Also, we don't necessarily want to be social the entire time, but can you make it more about, can I connect with at least one person prior to the match and have a positive conversation with them? So those are, I think there's a few ideas that everybody could really plug into that are almost surefire ways of getting yourself in a better mood.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think one thing that's important here is that everyone's a little different. For some people, they need to, in order for them to feel at their best going into a match, they need to focus on what's happening in that match and be thinking about it. And for other people, I think they do better when they get their mind off of it. Going back to the music piece, I think that sort of having two separate playlists can can be really helpful, right? Having a playlist or type of music, a genre that's more pump up, and having one that's more relaxed and to help you sort of chill out as needed. And again, you're preparing for that ahead of time. You're ready for either scenario, right? One scenario where maybe you need to be more amped up. Maybe you've been waiting around at the tournament site for a while, right? Waiting for that one match to finish. And you need to kind of get yourself pumped up. And the other being, okay, I'm already pumped up, but maybe maybe I'm feeling some jitters or some nerves and I need to actually feel more relaxed here. So again, we can use music to help us go in either direction. And I think the same is true of some of these other skills and tools, right? I think something like, I want to intentionally, I want to have a conversation with the tournament director or one of my friends at the tournament, or I want to go on, video chat with somebody and just, joke around with them for a few minutes. Again, that's going to be really helpful to, help you relax, help you get your mind off of things. But then there might be a moment where you want to do the opposite and you want to be focusing on what's coming up in front of you. And maybe that's where looking at your goals or visualizing is more helpful. So I think a big part of it is knowing yourself, knowing what what your preferences are, and then in the moment having the awareness to understand, okay, well, what do I actually need right now? Right? If I'm already amped up and ready to go, is that pump up music really what I need right now? Maybe not. Maybe it's, doing a little bit of deep breathing, right? So again, it's just, I think, understanding ourselves and then having the awareness in the moment to apply the right tool to the right situation.
Well, you actually just said something that reminded me of a pro player that I was working with about 3 or 4 years ago. He was playing at an ITF level, like the 15K. And he was in one of those locations where they basically run a 15K every single week. So you can basically stay there for a few weeks. And so he's there the first week, and he has a really good chance of winning these events every time he enters them. So he's super serious about it. He's getting all prepared and ends up really kind of stressing himself out. Loses first round. And so we were talking about what happened out there, and he noted that, yeah, I was not relaxed. I was really stressed. I'm not sure that really helped me. I really wanted to be serious this week and take it very professionally. And so I asked him some questions about, like, well, when you are playing your best, what's that like? And, what's your mood normally like? And how do you get into that mood? He said, well, a lot of times when I was back home, I would talk to my friend who was really funny, and he would always make me laugh. So I said, all right, let's work that into your preparation for week 2. Every day you're gonna video chat, as you said, with your friend who's really funny. All right. If he's not available, you're gonna find something on YouTube or whatever that you find humorous. Okay. And so he did that, and he won the tournament. Now, is it a direct connection? I don't know. But when we talked about it, he felt the impact was he was more relaxed going onto the court, less stressed, which enabled his game to come out. He wasn't blocking his game through stress. He was letting it out really through more positive affect, positive mood. And so this is a guy who's, he's playing at the ITF, 15K, 25K level, and specifically did an intervention to get himself in a good mood and then had a great week. Will he win every week? No, probably not. It's not the way tennis goes. But will he give himself a better chance if he's doing something like this? Absolutely. Right. So thank you for kind of prompting that thought. 'Cause I think, sometimes these stories are helpful for other players to hear them and see how they could implement something like that. I think the other piece I'd like to talk about, Josh, with positive affect is that we're trying to create this upward spiral, not just for one match, but also into the next round or the next round or the next event. And so I think that there's also some positive emotion things we can do after a match. Perhaps our reflection could be, of course, it's on what went well, what needs work, those kinds of things, but can we perhaps bring some appreciation for what we've done? Could we perhaps savor what we're experiencing, right? Just kind of consider it a little bit more. Like I was saying, that club that I've played some tournaments at, beautiful facility. I can just kind of sit there and just like, wow, this is pretty cool. We all get to, we're all in our 50s. We're getting to play tournaments and beautiful club during the summer in the US. And yeah, like that's amazing, right? Just sort of savor that moment. That creates that upward spiral a little bit more. And I think there are other ways of doing that. There's emotion. One emotion that's really powerful is awe, AWE, right? Just being in awe of where you were. And as I was thinking about today, Josh, I was thinking about a story you've told in the past about playing at Indian Wells. And I think awe was part of it, right? Savoring was part of that experience. And I was wondering if perhaps you could retell that a little bit and how that may have affected your performance.
Yeah, and I think, I think there's been different moments. Yeah, living in Boulder, Colorado. There's one tennis facility that I play at, which for anyone who's been to the area, they're the Flatiron Mountains, and sort of it's the foothills of the Rockies, and some of these mountains here in Boulder are just really really beautiful. So sometimes I'm actually reminded of this on a more regular basis as I'm playing at this one facility and just sort of taking in this panoramic view of the mountains as I'm playing, and sort of experiencing that awe. But the story that you're referring to, which I think I've mentioned here before, but I think it's worth saying. Um, I was playing in a college match in my senior year at Clark University. We did a trip out to California, um, and we played a school who I think was either ranked number one or two in Division III at the time. Ended up winning the national championship that year. And as it so happened, that was the one college match that I lost 6-0, 6-0. And so I'm playing in this match, and it took place at Indian Wells, which for anyone who's either played there or visited for the pro tournament, it is a stunning location, right? It's in the middle of the desert. There, really breathtaking mountains surrounding the venue. And so I'm playing and I'm getting crushed. I'm just absolutely getting crushed by a really good player, but I'm frustrated. And I think it's midway through the second set. And I'm sitting there during the changeover, and I start looking around and I start really noticing where I am, right? Noticing that I'm at the place that, many have called tennis paradise, right? Or the fifth slam, a place that the best players in the world play at. And what a beautiful location it is, right? Taking in the mountains. There's flowers nearby. And it really is just gorgeous. And yeah, that the awe from that moment, I think, really helped me. Again, I didn't come back and win the match, right? The result was the way that it was. But in terms of positive affect, in terms of my mood in that moment, it definitely changed it because I was able to shift my perspective. Instead of being so stuck in my anger or frustration about the score or about how I was playing in that moment, I was able to shift to that point of gratitude, and and have my focus be there on me being grateful for that opportunity. And I think we maybe this is a tough thing to talk about, but we never know how long we're going to be able to play, right? People have injuries, people have sickness. Life happens. I think one way to approach it, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but um, I think we can approach tennis this way and also other areas of life. If we can, I think rather than maybe taking things for granted or feeling like, oh, it's just another match, if we can try to approach things as if this is our first or last time that we'll ever be doing this activity, I think it gives us a completely, a radically different perspective on it, right? Okay, so if this is my first time ever playing this sport, right? Well, I'm probably going to approach it with a little bit of a beginner's mind. I'm not going to go in with such expectations about it. I'm just going to sort of be surprised by different things that might happen out there. And if this is my last match, okay, well, I'm going to approach it with an immense sense of gratitude, right? This is something I've been playing for a really long time. This is something that's been important to me. Um, and, I want to really savor it or soak it up because, I won't be able to do it again. And, I think, yeah, hopefully for when we play, it's not the last time. But I think when we can, if we can approach it in that way, it brings out that sense of gratitude. It helps us not take it for granted or just sort of go through the motions or say, oh, you know what, this isn't my match, but I'll have, plenty of other opportunities, right? We don't necessarily know that. So I think when we can go in and really treat it in that way, that, that, okay, it could always be the last time. So let's really appreciate it and let's really make the most of it. I think rather than that being a sense of pressure that, okay, now we have to win, or now I have to play well today. I think it helps us, go out there and enjoy it, make the most of it, and really feel a lot more gratitude for that experience.
I think that's a good sort of stoic as well as existential perspective. We often talk or discuss in stoicism and existentialism this idea of embracing your own mortality, because as you said, this probably won't be the last time, but there will be a last time at some point. Tennis is not forever, and if we can bring that sense of urgency as we might in that last match, because wouldn't it be great to just go out with this wonderful, fun performance, right? We go play the way you want to play. Why not? What do you have to lose? It's your last match. I think that's a great perspective to bring. So thank you for sharing that. So, Josh, as we wrap up here, any final thoughts or your own summary of the topic today for positive affect and its benefits for competition?
I think that, people could do a little bit of an exercise and maybe spend a couple of minutes and try to jot down on paper or on, the notes section of your phone, try to jot down, okay, what are some activities or behaviors that do tend to increase my mood or my, that positive affect, right? And, some of them are things that we can do before we play, some probably not. But what we can do through this list is we can start to, we can start to come up with that game plan or that routine for ourselves or that checklist for ourselves, right? And what Brian might want to do before a match, or what I might want to do before a match, or what anybody who's listening might want to do could look a little bit different. Again, I don't think there's necessarily a one size fits all approach here. I think it's more, about knowing yourself, learning from past experiences where maybe you did certain things before you played and it helped, and other things have maybe, hurt or not had that same positive impact. But yeah, being able to learn from our experiences and have that list so that, before you play, you have certain things to go to. And this doesn't need to mean that it's a superstition or that I need to do every single one of these things on the checklist or else I'm going to lose or else I'm not going to play well, because that's not the case. But really what it is we're trying to use some of our tools or just other behaviors, right? Some of which might be mental tools, some of which might be just, things like music or I think in Brad Gilbert's book, Winning Ugly, he talked about, Jolly Ranchers, right? Or, having something like that before you play. So, just thinking about what are the different things that you need to do before you play to help get you into the right state of mind, to help put you into that right mood. It doesn't guarantee anything, doesn't guarantee any results or that you're gonna play your best each time. But I think it does give you a better chance because I think by being in that sort of, flourishing emotional state, your likelihood of playing the way that you want to is increased. So I think it's, to me, it's about being intentional, being proactive, and being intentional with our approach and using the different tools at our disposal to help us do that.
I think your story of Indian Wells is also a great example of an in-match adjustment. Can we notice what our emotional state is in a match and try to intentionally change that? And then we're more likely to play better. So in the same exercise, Josh, we could ask listeners to write down some ideas for bringing more positive mood to a match when you're not feeling it.
Yep.
We don't all get to play in Indian Wells every day, so that there might be other things you have to reach for to change that mood. But yeah, maybe it's thinking about your pet. Maybe it's thinking about a loved one. Maybe it's something else. What can you do to almost just change your perspective, change your mood to improve your performance? And same thing, let's make a list of what we can do after the match to continue to spiral upward. Hopefully we have another match, but there will be another tournament, we hope. We'll want to carry this into our training. So the more that we're bringing along this upward spiral, remember, we're building psychological capital. We are making ourselves psychologically stronger in the face of adversity. That's a great reason in itself to engage with these positive emotions in a more intentional way. So I think it's a great discussion, and I think this is something when we consider pre-competition, in-match adjustments, post-competition routines that we should absolutely be thinking about and making sure we've got in our checklist going forward. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you all for listening. For more on today's episode, please check out the show notes. If you have any feedback or questions for the two of us, please email us at tennisiqpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the content that Josh and I discuss on the show, please rate and review the podcast so other tennis enthusiasts can find it more easily. Additionally, to be notified of new episodes, please subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, including YouTube. And you can also check us out on Instagram. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon in our next episode.